Good morning and welcome to Community Connection on July 15th, 2021. My name is Carol Spicer and I'm the owner of Spicer Facilitation and Learning, and happy to bring greetings to you from the unceded territory of the ancient Beothuk, otherwise known today as Pasadena on the West Coast. Adjacent to our Mi'kmaq lands, I ask that you take a moment to reflect on the Indigenous people in our province, the Mi'kmaq, Innu, and Inuit, and just take a moment to think about the lands that you're joining us from and respect our Indigenous people in our province. Very happy today to welcome Dawn Park with Community Sector Council, who is in a new role here on the Western region. So Dawn, I'll give you a moment to introduce yourself, and then Kelly, if you want to say quick words and let Dawn know who you are, and then Dawn will talk about some of the exciting things that are happening with your organization. So how's that?
Perfect. So hi, my name is Dawn Park, and I'm a new regional network facilitator with the Community Sector Council of Newfoundland and Labrador. So I'm based in Deer Lake, but my region extends Cornerbook Bay of Islands, and Deer Lake is the other boundary. So anything in between that area, all nonprofit charity groups would be within my region. So that is, we have 4 other regional facilitators, but I'm lucky to live on the beautiful West Coast and super excited to get to know all the organizations. Yeah, so I'll let
Excellent. So Kelly, if you want to say hello, and looks like Andrew's trying to get in and out. So we'll let Kelly say hello first, and then Andrew can join.
Good morning. My name is Kelly Radford, and I work for the Bilingual Economic Development Network for the West Coast of Newfoundland and Labrador. And I am assistant of Andrew. Andrew is the Economic and Touristic Development Officer, and I'm his assistant. Nice to meet you.
Excellent. Thanks, Kelly. Happy to have you join us. Andrew's coming in here now momentarily. Once he gets his audio, we'll get him to say a quick hello.
Yeah, so hello. My name is Andrew Hibbets, and I work for REDE TNL, so that's RDEE TNL. And we're a bilingual economic development organization. It stands for Réseau de Développement. Sorry, there's a mosquito in here. Réseau de Développement Economic Employability de Terre-Neuve, Labrador. So my role with REDE, I'm actually wearing 2 hats right now. So tourism development officer, and that's like on a provincial, working with partners in Labrador and all over the island, but I'm also economic development officer for the West Coast. So yeah, it's a fairly big workload, and that's why I have Kelly Radford joining me. She's our economic development assistant, so she's helping me take on all the work that goes along with the roles, and I'm very grateful to have her.
Excellent.
Great to be here.
Excellent. That's great. And I'm very pleased to have Dawn with us today to talk about some initiatives that they're doing under this regional coordinator position.
Awesome.
Excellent.
Thank you, Carol. Carol is wonderful. I've heard lots of great things about Carol, and she's an awesome facilitator. And so I'm excited to be here today and grateful for the invite. So thanks, Carol. And really excited to hear a little bit about your organization. And actually, I'd like to hear a little bit more. So it's really exciting to hear about it. And I'll share a little bit about what we're doing. As Carol mentioned, I'm new to the role. So the Community Sector Council, for those of you who don't know about it, the Community Sector Council of Newfoundland and Labrador is a volunteer charitable organization that promotes social and economic well-being within the province. So our head office is in St. John's, but I'm currently working on a project titled Tapping the Untapped Potential. So working with the community sector, being that we typically we're promoting. Sorry, my child just walked out and I got sidetracked. I'm sorry. That's what it is when you're working from home with this thing. It's sometimes the distractions. But right now we're profiling our sector. There's a lot going on, as we know, in the province, And the community sector is proving to be invaluable to us going forward as a province. So what we're doing right now, one of the things we work on quite a bit is citizen engagement. So we do work on promoting volunteerism in the community. We host events, networking events for different organizations to connect, to talk about things that matter to them. But right now, I have to pull something up here. My screen just went.
Well, just while you're doing that, I can tell you Andrew is your poster child for that because he volunteers for everything in his community.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's good to know. No, you do seem like a very busy man just from your introduction. I was born and raised in this region, and so I'm very, very vested in seeing it thrive and grow. And it's very exciting to see a lot of my region, especially the Deer Lake area where I'm based out of, is growing, and it's exciting to see some of the things that are happening. So getting out and exploring that this summer is a big part of our role. As Carol mentioned, a lot of the networking aspects of my role is kind of put to the side a little bit in the summer, and we're just spending a lot of time getting to know our organizations more on a more genuine level, what they do, what motivates them, what drives them. So I'm spending a lot of my time just getting in the community right now and connecting with those organizations. Tapping the Untapped Potential really focuses on labor market and skills development issues in our region. So right now, under my umbrella, I have, I think, officially 464 nonprofit and charitable organizations listed within the region that I just told you. So there's a lot, there's so many of them, but a lot of them are operating in silos. Right, so a lot of them don't know what the other one is doing, and we're working to kind of bridge that gap, build strategic partnerships within private, public, and nonprofit industry. So we're kind of working to kind of profile the region and help them make those connections, bridge those gaps. One of the exciting things about it I like is the upskilling part. So the upskilling, and this is a part that hopefully we'll get to work with Carol going forward. In going through the region, what a big part of the untapped potential is, there's a lot of skills, resources that are left on the table in our region that are not being utilized for many different reasons. Sometimes it's just geography, other times it's awareness, people not being aware of what's around them. So we're looking at, as we're profiling the region and meeting with different organizations, we're trying to identify different skills and opportunities that we can help grow that sector, the nonprofit sector. So there are a number of trainings that we offer in-house, like board governance training, volunteerism, even digital training through our techno tutors. So there's a lot of training that we do offer in-house, but any training that an organization identifies through our conversations or through profiling, we have a fund right now that we can offer a large portion of that for free to the nonprofit sector in this region. So right now what we're finding is some of these smaller organizations it's hard getting engaged boards, it's hard getting engaged volunteers. So wanting to put out these programs, not having the funds to do it, we're able now to identify the need, and if we cannot provide it ourselves in-house, we contract wonderful facilitators like Carol to come in and fill that need. So it's really exciting, because a lot of times when you're in the nonprofit and community sector, the resources are a big issue, and sometimes training is the thing that gets left. And a lot of those people lead with their hearts, right? And they don't really complain about it, but they do deserve the development and the security in their roles that any other organization does. So we're really working to build their careers and to build that path for them moving forward. So that's a big part of what this project is, really. The labor market issues and the upskilling is the key part. In doing that, we will be hosting in the fall a number of learning sessions, as well as a number of brainstorming sessions to identify specific needs in the communities. But we'll be breaking down the region in 4 different groups initially, and then identifying common needs, and obviously moving forward. And we're hoping to have 1 to 2 focus projects in the fall, but we don't even know what they are yet. Right now, we're still in the kind of getting to know what's needed in the region. What we're finding is there's enough in the province of, I think we all know something coming from St. John's and it gets put across the province, but the West Coast is very different than the East Coast, and there's a little disconnect. So we're kind of trying to bridge that gap really and be in the region and make things happen in our region, right? So that's the biggest.
Excellent. Thank you, Dawn. So you mentioned there's 4 other facilitators. What regions are they covering? Do you know?
We have Twillingate, the Twillingate region, Burin Peninsula, and Labrador Straits region. We do have another, with the release of the Green Report, it kind of did change our role a little bit, because we do have a lot more profiling and research to do with that and data collection. So with that, we are hiring, I think, another 2. There was a posting for another 2 positions. One of them was the Mount Pearl area specifically, and another one somewhere out on the Avalon, but I'm not quite sure yet.
So Dawn, what are some of the things when you talk about profiling the region? Can you tell me a bit more about that? So obviously like a list of who everybody is, but what is it? Are you looking at this from that skill development? So if I work for, if I volunteer for a particular organization and I have facilitator skills, is that the kind of thing you're documenting, or?
Well, really, in profiling the sector, I guess in the context of tapping the untapped potential, the key thing is labor market issues and upskilling. So looking at, there could be anything from succession planning is a labor market issue, right? So if there's a lot of organizations, especially we're finding the smaller organizations where you have 2 or 3 people, and that's the heritage centers are a key thing in small communities, where one person, that's been their heart, and they might work 80 hours a week, I might be exaggerating, but it's their life, and don't even really think about when they're gone, that very valuable service to the community is gone, and a lot of people in the community just assume it's always going to be there, right? So then then what you're finding is there's a number of smaller organizations that do provide value to our province, and their leaders are within 2 to 3 years of going, and no one really behind them to fill in the gap, right? And if you know yourself, Carol, as a small business owner, and I was a small business owner, no one's going to work as hard as you on your business, right? You can hire the greatest employee you want, but no one's going to work as hard as you are, right, for your business. And that's kind of, it's hard to find even people now out there to fill those heritage roles, with the passion to really want to sustain it and to put the effort into, but not really. And, not just that, we have another organization here, I think, who provides medical services for a very specific group of people, where it may only be affecting 100 people in the province, but the people it affects, it's life changing, and she's the only person who's doing it. So she's the HR, she's the the accountant. She got to make sure. Plus, she's the customer service, and so there's a lot of that in the smaller ones. Out of the 400 in my region, that's a major issue. And even but I'm also looking at skills too. You have boards, where you have a 2-year turnover or 3. When they turn over. Someone comes in and they're passionate about the mission, but they're still legal. A small board of a small organization has the same legal requirements as a board of Western Health, right? Foundation. So when you're looking at that, there is opportunities to have strategic partnerships so we can grow our region's skills. A lot of nonprofits don't have the finances to invest in skills development to the level that a private institution or public institution does. So being able to kind of build those partnerships and relationships where we can kind of piggyback with each other. So it's a lot for us to bring in someone to do board governance training for 2 people, right? But if I know 4 or 5 organizations who have 1 board member who needs to understand, then we can easily put those. So we're trying, and that's a big part of what I mean by the better I understand the region and their needs, the better I can work with them, right? And in the essence of a 1-year pilot project, I'm not really focusing on any. I really feel every bit of information is valuable. With the
Okay.
end goal is really but the end goal is to upskill and build capacity in the sector, right? So anything that can fall under building capacity and skills building, that's the focus. But how we gather that information varies, right?
Okay.
So yeah, it's very broad. I mean, it could, some organizations, it's something like succession planning where someone else needs, you know, we're a small organization and we want to build our social media presence, right? So we want to know how to do digital storytelling. So if we have someone in the organization with those skills and abilities to facilitate that, or we look outward. But if I notice a trend, then I start looking for how do we build that skill in the sector, right?
Okay.
Most nonprofits don't have a digital media expert on their staff, right? But what's there not to say that, you know, if we identified skills within our region that we can't have that service available to nonprofits, right? Where one person don't have to house that resource, where we can build a structure that builds that capacity in our region. So that's kind of where I'm headed with the project. So
Okay.
it's so broad that, you know, it's almost led by the interactions I have with people. But as long as we can fit it under labor market and you know, in skills development, it's good to go, right? So
Okay, perfect. Dawn, if you want to put your contact info over in chat for Andrew and Kelly so that they can
sure.
grab it to reach out to you, because I know Andrew's mind's racing because he's involved in so much. So, community connection for me is a way to give back to this community. A number of my clients are not for profit, and it was prompted because, similar to what you're saying, Dawn, I'm working with the different organizations and they're all having the same challenges or they're all having the same experiences. And so I sort of developed this, and because I'm kind of giving it back, I just do it quarterly. But I am going to put out to you, Dawn, I don't know if there's an option for us to maybe talk about doing a monthly connection for this community like we do for the entrepreneur community. So Navigate hires me to facilitate that on their behalf. But if there's an opportunity potentially, you know, we could maybe look at doing something for this
Sure.
community, and, you know, I could do the registration and the platform and sort of facilitate the dialogue, but it's an option to maybe look at if you think it's going to build that way. But I think you'll find as you get to know the different folks, and you know, I guess that's one of the things you can ask them, Dawn, is, you know, are they interested in having, you know, some sort of virtual connection or some sort of thing? Because the travel, I think, is a big piece. And especially where you may have people that, like Andrew, volunteer for 2 or 3 different boards, but has a day job. So can't necessarily take, you know, 2 hours out of his day job to drive into Corner Brook for a networking event. But if there's some virtual opportunities, you know, you might be able to get some people to connect with it, that, and we're all sort of getting more comfortable with connecting virtually. I know I'm excited. I have an in-person meeting on Monday, so I think we're at that point of I'm gonna start to shift again, and it'll be a bit more of a blend, and I'm so excited about that because I think we need that. I know Andrew and I tried 3 times to connect in person, so it just didn't work. Some of the things, Dawn, that I'm hearing, I can share with you sort of what I'm hearing from some of my clients is certainly understanding not just sort of board governance, but what type of board are you? You know, are you an advisory board? Are you a decision board? Are you an operational board? Like, I don't think a lot of people really understand that. No, I think there's 5 different types or something, you know, that I went through on some training and looked at. And so that impacts who's actually running the organization. Is the board making recommendations to an executive director? Is the executive director making recommendations to the board who's making the decisions? So I think sometimes that's a bit gray for some folks. I think volunteers is huge, and obviously in COVID that's totally changed so many different things. But to build on the optimism that Andrew has and I have as well, we're going to be getting back to being able to do events. And how do you get volunteers, and how do you secure that? So I know that that's a challenge that a lot of folks have always had. One of the biggest things that I've run into with clients is I've done several strategic planning sessions with clients. the public doesn't seem to understand what they do.
No.
You know, and so they sort of understand what they do, but getting that message out. So I'm thinking like that whole social media thing or something, if there was a support for organization that we can help get your message out, I think that would be, if there was one resource for an area that manages those messaging for people, because they don't have that skill set necessarily, or they're, the friendly invasion, the fact that I know my grandfather helped build the base, I mean, the friendly invasion could be one of those Comic Con things for all I know, right? Like, but I know why it's called that, but it until you start getting that messaging out and people don't realize. So I think that's a big challenge for a lot of not-for-profits, is having people actually understand what it is they do.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say the last thing that I've heard from most of them hits their strategic plans is fundraising.
Yeah.
So
and that's challenging. And to be honest, like that's a reality. The reality is it's probably going to get harder. I always say, I said it in college, but this was long ago. But I was like, you can't bleed a turnip, I used to say, right? Like, if you don't have the money, you don't have the money. I mean, you might need this in your organization and you might need that, but if you don't have funds, you don't have the funds, right? And as a reality in the province, we don't know what the future holds, but we do know that things might get a little rocky, financially as province. We don't know how that looks, but you only got to fill up your car, the gas tank in your car to realize, that prices are going up. So it's just a reality I think we all need to face. But from my perspective, it makes even the community sector, from where I stand, even more invaluable to Newfoundland. So learning how to sustain it through all this is going to be a challenge, but I think it's a challenge that needs to be undertaken. But it's going to be a challenge. Like I really think even provincially expecting all of the provincial funding that we're used to is going to be challenging going forward. So how are we going to get that? And I think that's a lot of where the tack comes from, social enterprise or maybe social purpose organization. I think that's where that stems from, in cooperatives. So hopefully that plays into it. I really agree with what you said about people not knowing what other people are doing. And one of the things that we're doing this summer is we're starting it now. It will probably launch in a couple of weeks, but just a little social media thing for the summer, community corner. And it's just really going to highlight different organizations in the region, what they do. It might highlight, so what I've reached out to a couple, and I'm going to put it, if after the first 2 or 3 videos are done, if it goes well, I think we're just going to keep it going and put out a mass call and give organizations an opportunity to share with us first, and otherwise we'll identify them. But if someone has, wants to highlight their organization or business or what their mission, what they do, or if they want to highlight a volunteer, someone who's been invaluable to their organization, and bring recognition or thanks to that. But we're trying to kind of fill it with an information. It's going to be very short, just anywhere from around 1-minute clips, like that's it. And just because we don't want to bore people, right? But each we'll have one episode a week to start from each region. So there'll be 4 through the community corner a week right now, and just highlighting different organizations and events, people in the region, right? So it's going to be very dynamic in how it evolves. Obviously, if someone's going to take the initiative to write me and want to highlight a volunteer, then that's going to take precedent over. If you're going to do that, we're going to highlight them, right? So I would rather it come from the people and me picking, well, I'm going to highlight this, or so I'm not really going to have anything to do with that, but I'm hoping that we get a good response from it. But looking to just to highlight people, events, whatever, right? And so we're excited about that. And then we'll be going forward and doing no more than, for the first 2 months, we said no more than 90-second videos. So, but we can do a lot in 90 seconds. You can do a lot in 90 seconds.
You can.
So hopefully, hope if that does well, that may extend obviously through the year, and we can get some more organizations some exposure, and we can probably build on that, right? There's always room to build on it, but got to start somewhere.
Mhm. The other thing I found interesting about this sector is how many groups serve the same people but don't realize they serve the same people,
Mm-hmm.
if that makes sense. Whether it's youth or mental health or environment or indigenous or something, right? And you've got all these groups that are working on their own little initiatives or their own little ways to support that community, and they don't know that there's all these other ones also trying to support that community.
No, and I typically find do you find it's a lot of I kind of put some of that with funding, way funding is structured and divvied out. It's almost where, you want that. I find people work in silos because they're competing for the same funding a lot of the times. So it's almost like, because I need, and a lot of nonprofits, I worked with nonprofits before I took on this role. And when one of the things I noticed is most nonprofits are contract work, right? The people are working on short-term contracts, and it's all dependent on the funding, as some organizations are lucky enough to have some full-time staff, right, to keep it going year-round. But so when you have an organization that's very predominantly their survival depends on funding, and you're all applying for the same funding to keep your organization going, I feel like sometimes we could restructure that a little to, I don't know, I think that adds to it, right? Because, well, if I work with this one, I'm not going to get funding for my project, and that's kind of, so someone may be working with youth, and then you have someone else solely focused on mental health, when they could partner and put something in the, but they don't. I think naturally sometimes you're just trying to figure out how to help your target or fulfill your mission or and community work is hard work. I always say if someone's in community work, it's hard work, and if they've been in it long term, it is definitely hard work, right? If they've been in it a long time. So sometimes they're just so focused on helping, that clientele. So a lot of that is awareness too, and what you're doing, Carol, and creating these, just getting people to talk and realize, oh, I never thought of that. That's what's going to do it, really, right? So I think it's awesome.
I know I had a contract with 2 organizations in Corner Brook that came together to get funding. And they hired me to do a needs analysis for them. And so it was two separate entities, but very closely linked, same client group that they were dealing with predominantly. And so, it made sense to come together and get the funding instead of both of them competing for the funding for their project. So I think that may be an area, Dawn, where you could sort of help some people realize that, hey, you may think you're too small to apply for that $100,000 project, but if 2 or 3 of you dealing with the same group applied for that $100,000 project, you probably would get it,
right?
Instead of each of you competing or whatever. So.
No, it is really good. And one of the things I do see too a lot that's helping nonprofit is the connection between community groups and for-profit business. And it's kind of a connection that a lot of people don't really for-profit typically partners with for-profit, right? Unless they're so. But one of the things that we're finding, like I mentioned earlier, was raw material. One of the biggest example I had, I thought it was so awesome when one of the big businesses here, their material, their waste from they do a lot with wood, is wood chips, right? It's just so many wood chips, and they had to pay to get them trucked and disposed of. So it costs them to dispose of that. So long story short, through discussion, those wood chips now go to Pasadena Nature Park in the Pasadena Ski and Nature Trail.
Oh yeah.
So they arranged with the municipality to be able to get the wood chips and then bring it to their organization, and now they had enough to do almost the full trail or a large portion of the trail with the wood chips. And so they said they would never have been able to afford to buy the materials to do it, to fundraise the funds. They had to pay someone to take the waste away, the organize. So those 2 companies mutually benefited from each other, saved each other money, and never would have thought of it, right? Except they were at a random networking event and it was just the same thing, and it was so cool to see it kind of, you know, develop. And and those types of things are everywhere in our region, right? There's so many, big and small, so it's exciting. So
Yeah. Well, I think Andrew can attest to this one in our entrepreneur community. Almost every session, if not at least every second session, there's a live connection happening right in front of us. And Andrew was part of the last one. I think Ivan reached out to Andrew and like, I want to come to your next meeting to do this. And, you know, right in front of us happening in this session, because they're there, people are exchanging in chat and there's a connection happening. We've had people sell products online in front of us, you know, just because they've been brought together. So, I mean, it's a huge thing. Obviously, it's what I believe in because it's what I do for so many people. And I've been fortunate because I speak in front of people for a living. I have no issue networking. I can walk into a room, I can walk onto a platform. I'm usually the first one, if I'm not leading it, I'm usually the first one in chat saying hello to everybody because to me, that's what you do.
yeah.
But there's a lot of people that struggle with that, right? So being able to make those connections for people and make them comfortable enough to have those conversations, I think is huge. So I'm excited about your project, Don. I think, you know, my own personal, I'm chairperson of the Heritage Society in Pasadena, so Heritage is my heart project. But also just, I probably 80% of my clients are not for profit. So, you know, I certainly have a warm spot in my heart for the not-for-profit sector. So I'm kind of happy to hear that somebody's in this role that everybody alluded me to a year ago. And I hope to see some really good things coming and some good synergies coming from what you're able to find out.
One thing that we like to lead with is Andrew and Kelly, especially in your regions, if I was a genie in a bottle and I could grant 3 of your wishes for your organizations, what would they be? And no, like some of them I obviously probably can't grant, but if I was a genie, what would you ask for?
Right now, you want an answer?
You don't need to, even if you only think of one thing or whatever, but if there's something that pops in your head, like.
Well, no, I mean, the social media piece that Carol mentioned before, that is very important. Like, not so much for the organizations that I'm involved with, because we're all kind of techie, I think. Or we have somebody, luckily, that does the tech stuff. Maybe it's me. I don't know.
You're techie.
But like I have run into organizations, like, and I won't mention specific names, but I even sadly last year, now of course the pandemic didn't help, but this was a new organization, and they invited me to one of their meetings, and I was super excited to go, and I thought like they had a really great concept and stuff. They were still exploring, you know, trying to find their footing and whatnot. So I think that they did get a little bit lost, but like the initial concept was fabulous, right? But I noticed they were talking about like brochures and stuff like this. Now, I mean, this was 2020, like say like a year ago, July 2020, you know what I mean? And I was like, well, I think I would focus more on an online presence right now than anything else. Like, you know, especially like with the huge shift towards, you know, online, right? But I quickly realized that nobody around the table knew how to use Facebook or anything. Like, and it was really surprising because I thought, well, you know, I mean, my grandmother before she passed away had Facebook, but I mean,
Yeah.
but nobody there knew how. So maybe sometimes I just assume that everybody does, or, you know, or at least somebody does, but nobody did. And I thought, whoa, like that's a huge obstacle for them because, you know, like, and I realized there was going to be a steep learning curve, like, because I said, well, you know, set up a Facebook account and page. And then they were like, don't you have to send in an ID and stuff to get approved? They had no idea. I was like, whoa, okay, like, you know, there's a learning curve here. So,
So don't go down the road of whether it's a page or a group, because that would really confuse them.
yeah, I know.
For sure.
Yeah, and you know, there's definitely a huge piece of work there. You know, social media. Also, what I find on the Port Peninsula is I think there's going to be a huge opportunity there to do just training out in all technical sense, like Zoom apps, like just using tablets, smartphones. I think I don't know, maybe even like a how-to 101, like working from home and etiquette and stuff like that, you know what I mean? Because what's happening since the pandemic, you know, we all had to shift to online, you know, whether it was people working from home or students going to school and whatnot, but also revealed that a lot of communities are at a disadvantage. So, for example, there's communities around the Port Peninsula that don't have access to high-speed internet, or until very recently didn't even have cell service, say, for example, in mainland and Three Rock Cove. Just got a cell tower December 2020, which was a project that we were involved with. But yeah, some of these communities don't have access. We're trying to get them access because of the Universal Broadband Fund that the government of Canada announced. So we have an application in, fingers crossed. And then there's some communities like they have it on paper, but they might have an exclusive deal with, say, like IceNet or something like that. So nobody else can go in there, but what's being offered isn't really high-speed internet. So I'm hoping at some point,
Yeah,
like the government that made the decision with them will say, well, hey, like, you know, we had a contract, you were supposed to offer this quality, you know, this level of quality, and you're not. So, you know, so we had to let some competition in, you know, because you can imagine, I mean, if they only just got cell phone service last December, chances are they've never owned a smartphone. Because why would they? You know, why would they go and buy a brand new iPhone to drive into Stephenville to use it? You know what I mean? It's an hour away, right?
Are you familiar with Techno Tutors?
I did, yeah, I went on those events, and I think even Kelly participated in like Zoom for hosts or something like that, or
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's some of those things, but like what I find, they might need some in-person stuff, you know, because I've tried to organize, like say, for example, I had a tourism planning workshop for Port. That's been on my radar since I started. The pandemic's working against me. And I also have that a lot of them out there don't want to use Zoom. Like they don't feel comfortable or know how, or, you know, so I have them calling in, but I can't show them anything on the screen. So there's an education piece, I think, that will come after. Like, you know, you got to get the infrastructure in there, and then after, they need to learn, you know, how to use it, right? So a lot of opportunities there for Community Sector Council, for Carol, for everybody, I think. I think there's enough work for everybody.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think too, one thing on the virtual piece, you know, I've had a few people actually hire me to help them with their facilitation skills in the virtual space. I said, if this is the time to join the virtual space as a facilitator, is now, because people are much more forgiving. You know, a year and a half ago, I mean, I've had my cat walk across screen. A year and a half ago, I would have been mortified, right? Absolutely mortified. Now, if it happens, everybody's like, oh, look, he's beautiful. And they go on, you know, and we don't.
Everyone feels your pain.
we don't feel it, and we're more forgiving. I mean, if you're unprofessional, yes, people aren't going to forgive that. You know, I mean, you still have to have those aspects, but people realize there's life going on around you, and this is the world we're in now. Whereas a year and a half ago, I would have taken that as a personal, oh my God, she's so unprofessional. Her cat was in the room, you know. But you know, now it's we got kids, we got things happen, you know, power failures, all those kinds of things that can happen. But I agree with you, Andrew. I think this is the time for people to come on, because it's not as intimidating as people think it is, and people are forgiving. You know, to people that are trying their best. That's all you can ask. Yeah, but there is a little bit of an etiquette, right? There's a little bit of a, you know, I think to your point, Andrew, there's some training that could help people in some of that, right? And I think even too, in the not-for-profit sector, I find in some of the organizations I've worked with, people don't realize you're representing an organization. You're in their mind, they're volunteering, so they're just being Bob, but
Yeah.
Bob, you're at this thing representing this organization. Like you need to be a little bit professional, to some extent. But like you say, Don, their heart projects, they're there for the right reasons in their heart, but they don't necessarily know how to conduct when they're representing an organization. So, and that can be detrimental to getting volunteers or support too. So I don't know.
Yeah.
I think there's some areas there, but I'm excited about your project, Don. I think, as I say, both from the clients I work with and from organizations that I've been involved in, and for folks that I know like Andrew who are involved in a lot of different organizations, I think it's exciting to hear there's someone kind of taking that global view, because we get into our work and we're passionate about our particular mission, but we may not be aware of what's happening on the other levels, and some ways to connect. So thank you so much for taking the time to come today. I'm sorry I didn't have a bigger crowd for you, but it's July, so.
I find after May 24th weekend, it's a little more challenging, and then it's like that till the kids are back in school and everyone's settled.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, that's probably true. So Don, again, I'll leave the thought with you about whether you want to perhaps partner up and offer other events, but on my own sort of calendar, my next community connection will be happening in October. And I haven't firmly set a date because I'm trying to decide if I want to do it during Small Business Week or if I want to stay away from Small Business Week, or because not-for-profits don't necessarily always involve in that, but I think there's an opportunity for them to connect with the entrepreneur community as well. So I kind of have that up in the air, but October is my next planned community connection.
Maybe if you do want to put it during Small Business Week, like we can include it as part of our calendar of events and promote it and get some in this, get more people from this region, like the Southwest Coast.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking, because I'm just thinking like yourself, a lot of us work, but we have volunteer lives. So I think, there's that aspect, but I'd like to see, maybe those synergies that Don's talking about, that, a for-profit entity might be able to help support or connect or do something with so maybe I should, Andrew. Maybe I'll chat with you in another couple weeks or so and see what your calendar's looking up. I know Allison's back in August, mid-August, and see what BDC's plan is.
Yeah, we're already starting. We've been meeting already about Small Business Week. We started, I think, in May. I don't know why. We just get really anxious. We want to put it together.
Well, it takes time to plan, right? So
they're talking about a hybrid of events. So they're looking at some things in person, maybe. But with a virtual backup, I think, for everything. But this, of course, is virtual, and I think that's great. I think we could promote it. And I just think, because I know the community connection, I think it's, well, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm sure you welcome businesses and stuff, right? But this is mostly nonprofit for the community connection piece, right? Yeah. But if we were having it in Small Business Week, we should obviously, I think, open it to small businesses, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or have it as an entrepreneurship ecosystem series.
Well, I think we're probably going to do that anyway. I'd say that Allison and I will put our monthly Navigate coffee break during Small Business Week. But I'm wondering if this as a separate one would be good as well. So that's kind of.
I think the Community Sector Council, I think, with the Small Business Week, it is what that I know that they haven't necessarily been, very involved, but I feel that's a big problem. That's one of the things in our, the disconnect there it is, because they are small businesses, right? A lot of nonprofits are small businesses. They are structured differently. And again, like you said, Carol, earlier, that's why the partnerships aren't being made. That's why those connections, because we're separating them in our heads. And, I think, well, we can easily, if you're in the industry, you can easily separate, the differences. There's a lot of similarities, and there's a mutual benefit there. And for someone who's a small nonprofit entity who's, running, we have a lot of small little you know, people who are selling their artisans or their arts for, and giving portions away for good. So they're technically under the social business, doesn't really go to small business. They're not there to build really revenue for themselves. It's very social focused. So they don't lump themselves in with the entrepreneur small business community. They, right, but that gap needs to be filled, I feel. And you know, Small Business Week coming up was definitely on my radar, even in this region, because it's something that I've noticed over the years just through living and being in the region, that there's such a disconnect between those two groups of people. And I think you know, the synergies between them would be so naturally forming if they were in the same room. Like all of those connections would be made. Those,
Yeah, that's
you
what
can't get them in the same room, right?
That's what I'm kind of thinking. So Dawn, for you to know, October 18th to 22nd is Small Business Week.
One of the things, Carol, I don't know if you knew that we were doing it, that we're piling it in Deer Lake starting the fall. It more based on, so the identified problem was volunteerism, getting people to volunteer here in Deer Lake. So what we're doing is we've taken, the faith-based organizations are very involved here, but very not active through COVID. So a lot of their resources were dormant, a lot of their volunteers were dormant. And in little small communities, I mean, I think there's 11 different faith-based groups, all different, you know, and now with New Canadians, we have so many different representations. So, and I've been working to kind of to build those relationships because again, it's going to, a lot of times we avoid it because of sometimes it's hard to connect people due to, you know, but if we can just focus on, you know, the common values of good, all of them have a common good or a community. Like there's a lot of commonalities, you know. So we've been building on that, and what we decided to do is each organization or faith-based group does have at least one person who's going to represent, and we're going to collect data for our region. We're going to do a skills inventory of our region and build it to see if it would help supplement our volunteerism. So we got some people who won't join, who kind of won't join the Winter Carnival Committee. They don't want to have to go to the meetings, and that commitment is a big, you know, people don't like commitment. But he might be a carpenter and wouldn't mind going and building the set, like donating 2 hours of his time. So instead of getting people to say, okay, I want to do X, Y, or Z, or I want to be on this board, or I'm gonna, you know, coach this team. Well, let's see what skills we have in this area, and you know, and see who's willing, you know, what we have, and try to source it that way. So we're trying to do that on a really small scale through faith-based organizations, because they seem to have a lot of volunteers already at the, you know, with just the idea of giving back to the community. And I think it's time for us to kind of focus on all the positives in our community, because there's going to be a lot of negative coming down the pipeline anyway. So people, people need to switch their minds to, like, I hate for lack of a cliche, but like, not live in lack, live in abundance, right? Newfoundland right now has been so, and it's not going to get prettier, but I mean, there's still so much good here, and you know, the people are resilient, they are strong, and I think that message, maybe the community sector will take a big role in kind of keeping that in there, right? Like, so those values are strong in our region. Newfoundlanders are known for those things, right? So I think we need to hold true
I
to
often
those.
talk about that. Everyone's got a hidden skill, a hidden talent, right? And the example I always use is that I read in church. I have no issue standing up reading. I stand in front of people for a living. My mother's an accountant. She says, "Don't you dare put me in front of a podium. Now give me a spreadsheet." She said, "I'm all there," right? So it's looking at those talents. I agree with that, and I think back to, you know, where my head is, and what you're saying too. I never sort of thought about it, but a not-for-profit is a small business, and maybe, Andrew, we look at a little, almost an info session, run your not-for-profit as a small business and connect with the business community. You know, we do a little separate one, just kind of that blend. We figured how to market it in that way, but or learn from the business community how to run your not-for-profit efficiently or something. I don't know.
Well, that's even part of the skills thing, is identifying the skills. So if you have a chartered accountant in our community who who doesn't have time to, to volunteer for anything, but is willing to say, I don't mind committing, 1 hour every 2 weeks to answer questions or to help or to work with a specific organization. But it's not making that long-term every day or every week commitment, but saying, I have this skill, or I have this, and I am willing to offer it for, X amount of times per week, but getting people to give what they have, instead of expecting them to tap out their resources in order to be useful. We're all kind of burning the candle at both ends right now. And I feel like most of us don't know what's happening 3 weeks from now when it comes to travel and things. So it's hard to plan anything, right?
Yeah.
And I feel like right now it's really hard to commit to anything because we don't know what 2 weeks from now looks like sometimes. So just kind of.
And I agree. I think there's a lot of people that could give pockets of time, but don't want to commit to sit on a board or sit on a committee, or I think friendly invasion, I'm sure, Andrew, that's a year-long, to plan it. You don't plan the friendly invasion in 2 weeks. So there's a big commitment to that. But maybe on day of, you got somebody who's willing to do traffic control or, kind of thing. So yeah, I like that idea.
Even the technical stuff, like the accounting or the digital story, you may have, one of the things I spoke with the College North Atlantic, and we had a couple students who were working on animation, and so they needed volunteer hours for part of their program. So we've got a lot of projects, right? So it's kind of like, how about we work together and we provide the project. So then what happens is in school, we had it worked for a year, and I think if we expanded it, it would really work. But you have a lot of people with technical skills growing in the colleges that need the experience, and instead of simulating case studies, and they could actually have practical real life experience and be of benefit, right? Because I can guarantee you a first year student doing digital animation is going to put together something a lot better than I'm going to do. Even if it's not perfect, it's going to be a lot better than I'm going to do. So I think, it gives them an opportunity to hone and grow their skills. And it also gives a nonprofit an outlet. I'm going to reach out to so-and-so, but if we have a collection of those skills, it still has that effect, right? So we're hoping to do that and build from it, but it's exciting.
Well, maybe Don, what we can look at is having you back in 6 or 9 months and give us an update on, what are some of the things that you've heard and some of the synergies and things that have happened, and certainly if there's a way that I can support, as I've said, just let me know. We've had conversations before as well. So thank you, Andrew and Kelly. It was great to meet you, Kelly. Thank you for joining us today and giving your perspective. And I'm glad to hear that Dawn's not going to turn you away from anything, even though you're not within her technical zone. You're on the West Coast and she'll help you out. So that's good to hear. And yeah, we'll look, I might reach out to Andrew in a little bit, and we'll talk about Small Business Week and see where we can kind of make this work and maybe market it to both groups and have you guys help market it and stuff. Because I really do see the synergies between the not-for-profit sector as being so important. Every not-for-profit has the same challenges. Work together. It's much like the entrepreneur community that's grown. Andrew can attest to it. He's been on since probably almost the beginning. And our monthly coffee break has gone from small groups like this to 40 plus. So it's building and the synergies are happening. So I'd like to see that for the not-for-profits as well. So thank you all for coming out today, and have a great day. And I guess Andrew and Kelly, I'll probably see you in August on our coffee break. And other than that, enjoy your summer.
Sure.
Good luck with Friendly Invasion. I hope it goes well.
Thank you.
Come out and check out the events.
Yeah, I might get a chance to do that. I was saying to Dawn when I first started, I got a couple contracts, but they're all in the hands of my clients right now, having to do some work. So I've had these pockets of time. I'm like, it's kind of weird to have a bit of free time around. So you never know, I might make my way out. So thanks again, and have a great day, everybody.
Yeah. You too.